This is day 6 of the June 05 7-day retreat in Springwater. It's the best time during a retreat when the rain falls, or whatever it is doing. You don't have to listen to the rain. It's just raining. And when you sit by yourself, the words can be left out. Whatever we name and know and call fragments the universe a little bit into this and that, and then if you internally say, I am hearing the rain, well, there's another fragment. There's me, which doesn't really truly exist. It's just there. Raining, listening, birding, dropping. Words don't catch it, do they? But the whole thing is there, and the listening is the whole thing. Do you see that? Listening is the whole thing. Or you put it in a more pleasing way, you can say, I am the whole thing. But these are words. What is really true is this. In its fullness and also emptiness. Emptiness meaning nothing more or less than what? You're waiting for me to answer. This body-mind being empty of the incessant, domineering me story. I'm here in Springwater, I'm in a retreat, isn't that wonderful? Or not so wonderful? It's almost coming to an end. And one's reactions to that statement, internal statement, can that sort of abate? The more the me story abates, the emptier it gets, and therefore the fullness of life. Too many words again, isn't it? But the words are only meant in a benign way to awaken the mind to what's here, so it can listen freshly. Because often people say at the more beginning stages of meditation, until you mentioned the rain, I didn't hear it, or the bird, or the thunder, or the car. Thanks for mentioning it. Now it's here. As your quietness and listening matures, you don't have to be directed. This here-ness and now-ness happens on its own, without somebody pointing it out. But it's all right to point it out. There's nothing wrong about it. And then let the words go. And let go what you know about rain. It wells up, doesn't it, at times, particularly if you're a gardener. I wonder at times how my flowers at home are doing. We had some dry days, and fortunately somebody went there and watered the plants. So the thoughts go there. Are the flowers watered? And now I don't have to worry about it. It's marvelous. This gentle rain just inundating plants and earth. Now, if you were living in a place which is already flooded, was flooded last year, you've just barely repaired your house, and then now it's raining again, there is a different attitude toward the rain, isn't there? Then the rain is bad. We say that. It's not bad. It's just not appropriate for the conditions of the earth, of my garden and house. There's always something appropriate and something inappropriate to what's happening. That's why yesterday I sort of reacted when somebody said, you or people here in Springwater say fantasy is bad. If I remember right, it was something like that. And I said, I couldn't have said that. Now, maybe I did if you get a tape, and sure enough here I said something like that. I'd like to hear the context. And sometimes I say something and the wrong word comes out, particularly as I get older and with this nerve damage. It happens. Saying or writing the opposite from what I intended. There's something awry a little bit with the passages. So let me just clarify why I said I couldn't have possibly said that. Because there is nothing that is intrinsically bad or intrinsically good, although we'll talk about goodness without an opposite. There is such a thing. It's always bad in relation to something. We're talking now, particularly since this Iraq war has started, and this word bad is on a lot of people's speech. These are bad people. The soldiers are told, and they pass it on. It's okay to kill them. They're bad people. Interesting to hear there was a little brief segment of an interview with Saddam Hussein, and he talked about the bad people who are doing some of the killing. It was the wrong people as far as he was concerned who were killed. So it's bad to kill those. It's okay to kill those, but not these. So in what case would fantasy be bad? I can't strain my mind right now to figure that out. When would fantasy be bad? Well, when you're steeped in fantasy about walking along the beach and you're crossing a 4-lane highway. That's bad to be steeped in fantasy, because you may be run over or give the driver of the oncoming car a heart attack because you're just walking along dreaming about the beach. Even as you walk along the beach, it's something to dream about, more beach. Oh, I wish I was at that end of the beach that was nicer than this one here today. It is always fantasizing, is taking us away from where we are. We cannot deny that. The sand between the toes and the shells that have been swept up by the waves, left behind as the wave recedes, the pieces of driftwood. It's all there as it is, and it is not bad or good, it is wondrous. If the eyes are open and not inwardly occupied with fantasy. Because if you're a writer, even a professional writer, you live on it. It behooves you to have a good fantasy if you're writing that kind of stuff. It comes in very handy to have a rich fantasy and embellish your paragraphs about this or that. The fantasy furnishes nice scenery and people, interesting to the reader. And then again, if you write a scientific treatise, it's good to have as little fantasy as possible because you want to say something correct, something that is accurate. And then fantasy has not much place. So maybe that helps the person who heard me say that fantasy is bad, or thinking that I deny the function of it or the appropriateness of it at certain times. We'd have to talk about it directly, one-on-one, and listen to each other. Not just stay with what I want to say, and never mind what you say. I just wait till you stop so I can say what I need to say. Then we're not in conversation. Then we cannot unearth from the past what we were saying yesterday with whatever memory has stored. May not be very accurate. But at least we don't have to rely on memory. We start now freshly. What do we mean by good and bad? But as you speak, I need to be quiet and listen. Really listen to what you have to say. And if I can't understand what you're saying, then ask you, what did you say? I didn't quite get it. So we don't just keep talking and we don't understand what we're saying. It's wasted time. Listen to the rain. Oh, listen. It's marvelous, isn't it? There's no argument about it. Unless we start describing it and you say, no, the rain doesn't sound like that. It sounds like this. And then we find out about ourselves, how we insist on our own way and don't want to hear another way. We cling to our own description because it has become part of me. I identify with it, and now I defend it to the hilt, like we defend our bodies. There has to come a moment when we leave behind for a moment what we believe in, what is part of me, my opinions, my history, my past, because otherwise I cannot understand what you're saying. It's marvelous when we have that ability to leave the past for the time being, leave it out and listen. Listen to this, whatever is happening. We call it rain. But is it really this indescribable sound? Also, let me just take a drink. We learned something yesterday, at least some of us learn, if we listen, and listen inwardly, not just outwardly, that if you come to a talk or to a group with expectations, you're bound to be disappointed. Not 100%. It could be just the right thing hitting the spot and you love it. It's better than you expected. So what's the opposite of being disappointed? Being gratified. Exuberant over what you're hearing, and that affirms or confirms what you already believe in or love. It's being confirmed now by the speaker. But most of the time, if we expect a certain thing and it doesn't happen, we're disappointed. And what does disappointed mean? We use the word and then we let it go. But here, we take the opportunity and time to look, what do we mean when we say, I am disappointed? What is happening in this body, mind, that we call being disappointed? You could now give a new word. I'm frustrated. What does that mean? There's some physical irritation, palpable, feelable, touchable, getting, we say, riled up or annoyed, which is the functioning of certain hormones or juices inside. I'm not educated in medicine, but something is happening physiologically when I say I'm disappointed. Something is being spilled into the bloodstream or into the muscles, into the stomach. I'm just explaining it in very primitive ways, but it doesn't matter how well it's described. What is important is that we're in touch with it. Something is happening inside physiologically that interferes with my normal, harmonious, if it's normal, we may not be normally harmonious, normal, harmonious rhythm of listening and peacefulness. That's what the person said. I was expecting some peacefulness and quiet. That's what I was hoping for. That's why I came to the retreat. And instead, there is a group dialogue which doesn't seem to produce that in me. The person didn't quite put it this way. It would be good if we sort out, is this happening to everybody? Am I speaking for everybody? Or am I speaking for myself mainly? Then we don't ignite each other so easily. I say, well, it just happened to me right now, then you don't feel, or I don't feel I have to defend something, because you say it's happening to you. We can make it so much easier to come together and dialogue or discuss if we realize this is happening to me mainly. What happens to others, I don't know. I can ask them, and until I find out more, not assume anything. Because like yesterday was interesting, some people were disappointed with the group. Other people said it was the best group you've ever had. So how do you explain that? It's interesting, isn't it? That we can be in the same place and yet not be in the same place, because what we bring into the place is our own little world of expectations and knowledge and opinions, points of view, which, if they are affirmed, brings the pleasing physiology. If they are not fulfilled, then there's the opposite. Stomach roils up, or blood streams into the head. I'm getting angry, getting more agitated in the primitive, in our past primitive life, to lash out, to punish or kill the other one who is, I mean now in very simplistic ways, to get rid of the one who has a different opinion. I don't like them to be in my presence. Because this is not what we think about. But these are these primitive reactions of anger where the muscles are ready to strike. We have refined it usually into words. We get angry verbally, but you can see in people's faces or feel in your own and in your muscles the increasing strength which wants to have an outlet. We're not quite comfortable with it. If you feel the strength, you want to use it. Lash out, verbally or physically. So to follow the words that cause emotions and realize the connection between words heard or words said and emotions arising. It's a very intimate relationship. These are not separate events. They have nothing to do with each other. And if we are witness to that, a word or a sentence triggering emotions, triggering physical reactions, it just happens like that. Where is the I? We put it this way because we've learned to phrase it this way. I got angry, or he made me angry. But if you begin to watch or search, where is the I in all of that? That we believe is doing this, is getting hurt, is wanting revenge? Or is there just the word, the rush of adrenaline, and the tightening of muscles, and the desire for relief and lashing out? Who is doing it? It is just happening as a very neat, feelable sequence. There's no one doing it. It is doing itself. It has done it before. It is in our racial or whatever, that's not the right word, in our...
In the species?
Yeah. Yes, it is laid down in DNA and all kinds of inheritance, which is memory. And always need to remember what has come down to us, as we say, is memory, in this case, through certain cells, chromosomes, DNA. No matter how often I read this, the mind doesn't quite retain it, but I can feel it. This kind of inheritance. And please, don't think I'm denying the past. Somebody has said that too. You're denying the past here. How could you? It's there, palpable. But I'm wondering whether the past has to rule my every action as it does when there's no awareness at all. Now here comes this awareness. Well, what is that? We're talking about it a lot because it is an unfathomable quality of human beings and animals too. My dog friend Bailey, he has awareness to a point, to a limit, within a limit. So what do we mean by getting aware of it or being unaware of it? Being aware how a word, as a word, arouses some internal chemical, electrical, nervous reaction. That's awareness. You notice it. You can almost trace it. Not quite put your finger on it, but it appears in awareness. Yes, you can say, I know what you're talking about. A word, a reaction, and a physical reaction, not just verbal, physical, desire to do something about it. This is marvelous. What's the sound? Why am I talking with this wonderful sound of rain? Oh, do you hear it? Or is it heard at the same time that you listen to the talk? Or do you say, well, when I listen to the talk, I don't hear the rain? You don't hear it. This is the rain, and think about this is the rain. But it's there, isn't it? Even though you listen to the talk, and even though you speak, or I speak, and yet the sounds and this marvelous cool air coming through the windows, it's all there. Nothing needs to be obliterated, interfered with. These things don't interfere with each other. So we were asking, where is the I that we think is doing everything? This is how we put it in words. I got so angry when you said that, and I didn't quite lash out, but in my fantasy, I did. Here where it comes in. I can imagine, I'm well-bred, I have learned not to hit out at somebody, but in my fantasy I can do it. Hit that person. Kick him or her. You may say, no, I don't do that. Well, I'm not saying you do it, but it can happen. This is where fantasy may have some beneficial action because it saves us from getting involved in hitting somebody and the consequences of that, being hit back or being arrested for it. What human beings have done a lot. They have started to live a fantasy life rather than our original primitive reactions working themselves out. I'm not saying it's right or wrong or good or bad. Please don't attribute it to what you hear. And become aware of this attribution that happens. We attribute things to somebody, or she really didn't like that or isn't in favor of it. That's what you're attributing to what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to, as neutrally as possible, describe what is being observed. Something converting into fantasy. A desire, a physically felt desire to lash out, using the pathway of fantasy to do it. Saving myself. The original brutality that maybe we were more engaged in when we lived 50,000 years ago. But I don't know. I won't speculate. Although it's all right to speculate if you have a way of testing it. That's okay. Was it really so? But if you have no way of testing it, then just say, well, this is speculation. It may not have been this way. People may have lived more peacefully than we do now. And there are people researchers who say that for some 40,000 years ago, 40,000 years ago, human beings living in groups were much more peaceful and democratic. Women had the same rights. That's what I read, written by a man. So it wasn't just wanting to find one's proper place in history, imagining it. See, there's so much to observe. It is just wonderful what goes on in this human mind to make up for things that we lack or suffer. We can substitute fantasy. Observe it in yourself and smile. Haven't proven it yet, but you can imagine it. You can even imagine proving it. So I'm wandering all over the place. I hope you don't mind and don't get confused. That's what people sometimes say at the end of the talk. I was so confused. Why? Why? Just listen. Just go with the waves, with the drops. Many, many drops dropping here out of this mouth. Go with it. You don't have to make a continuous thesis out of it. If you were my editor, you may have to do that, but I'll do it. I'll do the editing. See the mess and then make it a little bit more coherent. But as you're listening, you don't have to make anything coherent. Just listen to the moment of the words, how the fantasy translates it, and the rain. And remain unconfused. Is it possible? Yes, it is. You don't have to do anything with it. You can learn bit by bit, or not learn, just listen bit by bit. And sometimes say, yeah, I can see that. Or I can hear that. I don't have to do anything with it. Or if it raises a question, bring it to a group. Bring the question to the group. What confused you? Try to formulate it clearly as you're capable of. And then we'll see whether it is really so confusing or whether it can unconfuse itself through listening. Toward the end of the group yesterday, the little group, the small one, somebody asked an important question. It's being asked a lot. Because we come here with the expectation that something will happen to us. Hopefully learn some attention or learn to be aware. And the question being, what can I do, or what can you, Toni, advise to do, so I'll be more aware, more attentive? I don't have any scheme, although there are teachers, quite a number of them, who offer schemes which you can try out, practice. There's, what is her name? Katie? Byron. Katie, yeah. Oh, what's her first name? Is Byron. Yeah. She gives you nice questions to ask. How do you know? It's a good question. Where do you know that from? Are you sure? And then see what you come up with. Or, of course, there's Thich Nhat Hanh, who has so many books to teach awareness or attention. Mindfulness, he calls it. I don't do this here. You can go other places for that. But if you come here for 20, 30 years, you may find that you're a little bit more attentive than 30 years ago. That wasn't much of a promise, was it? But I think that is an approximation to the truth. Because I find people who've been here for a while, they're just more attentive. They've never been forced, they've never forced themselves, they've never had exercises, tests. But they're more attentive because they're more doing it. And what are they doing? Paying attention. What does that mean? Pay? Like money? Listening? listening together. I think with this listening together to talks in groups, and all the time we sit by ourselves, alone, maybe together, hearing the rain or the windstorm, the sounds coming from the kitchen, the pots clanking when there's drying pots or preparing the lunch, although it's done by people who are quite attentive, so it's amazing how quietly they bring it off. If you put somebody very new on a job, you can hear it. You don't know who's there, but you know it's not somebody who has done that many times. And part of the reason is they don't hear the noise they're making. You begin to expand the listening to include your own noises, not just the other people's. And as we hear the noise we make, they tone down. It always never ceases to amaze me. If I hear the noise I just made, I quiet down. If quietness is a value for me, if it isn't, then it won't happen. I remember one man who came here, he said, I love to hear myself make noise. And he was a clanker or a clunker. He was so honest about it, and it just, opening door, closing, it was all bang, bang, bang. So in that case, you get rewarded for hearing yourself be noisy, so you'll become more noisy. See, you can't make statements without having to pay attention to the opposite. Is that what's happening? And it may. So you cannot pin me down and say, you said, because there is a range of possibilities beside the one I said. One of the Zen koans, or it's not exactly a koan, but it is a learning phrase, is, in saying things, never say the whole thing. You could even say it's impossible to say the whole thing. But I had, particularly in the beginning, now it's getting a little bit better, this compulsion to be sure I said everything. Not necessary. Not only not necessary, it's nice. It's just like a Japanese painting or a Chinese brush painting. A lot left out. And that's the beauty of it, what's left out. So, sometimes when I get this question, how can I become more attentive? I say, well, by being more attentive. And it's not being clever or snippish. How do you say it? Snippish is a German word. Flippant. May sound like that. And it isn't meant this way and it isn't this way. Because I think it's true as far as the brain is concerned, the more it is used or uses itself in a certain way, the more entrenched certain ways become. And the less it uses certain ways, the more they atrophy. I don't know if you can say this to brain passages. Atrophy, or they just wither away. They are not reinforced. Connections, neuron connections. So I'm sure there is something physiologically true about it. The more there is attention, the more attention there is. I can prove it to myself. I can't prove it to you necessarily. But here, I know that some things are happening all the time. Connections made, attention connections. And if they happen once, they happen a little bit easier the next time. There's a whole new science building up on that. I don't know if you heard of the man Sheldrake. Sheldrake, a biologist and physiologist. He has founded this hypothesis and he's begging people to try to prove it. Oh, this is fabulous, this sound. Changes all the time, doesn't it? Sheldrake says and writes, oh, what is the book called? The Presence of the Past. Where is the man? The Presence of the Past. He says there are no laws, there are no mathematical or physical laws or chemical laws. It's just that things happen more often. And then we say this is lawful. This is the first time a crystal formed. There is high probability that it'll form again. Just because it formed once. I think that's beautiful. To get away from these are unalterable laws that we have to learn and obey. Rather see this is what is happening, and through its happening happens some more. We can explain all of history that way. Rupert Sheldrake is his name. He once dialogued with Krishnamurti and a few other scientists, but they didn't get someplace together, not very much. Sort of like this. It's interesting to the naive observer to see the two trying to get together, and it didn't work. Well, we'll end the talk, but you can keep listening to the rain. We'll end here for today.